G'day there, it's Dave here, Dave Mills, and I'm coming to you with more about the development momentum theory of chess. And we're looking here at problem number 14. And what I like about this position is that beginners, they don't quite know the energy around the king, so they're not quite aware, and we're going to talk to you about accelerating the position. And so just to quickly recap, there's obviously direct acceleration, forward acceleration. In other words, where your attack is all going in the same direction, type 1. And type 2 is when you restrain their activity, and type 1 is obviously you're gaining tempo. Type 2, you're reducing their tempo. You're neutralizing their threats, checks and captures. You're taking away the ability to do type 1 and type 3. Type 3 is when you alternate attacks. Now, alternation can happen instantaneously in the sense of where you're attacking multiple targets at once. Alternation can also be where you literally alternate. You move to different targets. And I always liken type 1, 2, and 3 to a car. A car that's speeding up from 50 to 60 is accelerating. That's type 1. Threats, checks, and captures. Obviously, its speed is changing, its velocity is changing. Velocity is, tempo, speed, plus, direction. And in our sense of direction is like a target. Where's it going? What's it doing? So so it's always a change of some sort of change of velocity. Now, if you hit the brakes and go back from instead of 50 to 60, you're going 50 to 40. That's type 2. You're decelerating them, but really it's just another type of acceleration, in the different direction. So in this sense, you're restraining them, you're neutralizing them, and preventing them entry, and that actually accelerates your pieces. That actually is a type of acceleration that is a sort of a difference between beginners and club players. Club players know how to sort of restrain their opponent more, so their attacks are more successful. Now, obviously, masters their whole strategy can be a denial, sort of a type 2 strategy, type 2 players. Now, type 3 is obviously when the car's going around the corner. Now, that actually is a type of acceleration. You can feel these forces acting on you as you go around the corner. Now, in this sense, I like to call that alternation. So alternation is defined as different attacks. Attack at, type 1 is attacking on one target, and the same direction, flowing in the same direction, threats, checks, and captures. Whereas the alternation is when you're like going around the corner. It's multiple directions simultaneously, or with tempo. So type 4 is a very, very important. In fact, I like to call type 4 acceleration furtherance. How much furtherance you've got in your position. In an easy way of thinking about it, furtherance is space. It's space plus simplification, and simplification can occur in a number of different ways. Simplification is a way of thinking about it is it's exchanging, it's promotion. You can't promote without exchanging, and literally promotion is like a type of exchange where you're swapping a pawn for a queen or another piece. And simplification can be where you're ahead in material and you want to simplify the position, and sacrifice can even be a simplification of the position. And obviously promotion is the advancing of a passed pawn, so where you gain material. So a passed pawn plus advancing equals a promotion. So type 4 is like the driving force to get to the end zone, to get to their back rank. It's the driving, so for the pawns or the pieces. in this case, where we're looking at the position here, we see that the rook has achieved the back rank for the dark squares, whereas white doesn't have any pieces on black's back rank. We also see that black's queen is not as centralized, but has more connection to that rook, into their end zone, whereas white has lifted the rook and to attack the king. Now, I would say that the most important thing here to look at first, is to consider the 5 rings. King safety, barrages, batteries, misalignments, loose pieces. So, check the checks that could be made is the first rule, because we know that it's a non-contact force. The king has a gravity all to his own, and also acceleration is like tempo like type 1 tempo gaining. And so what we can see is black's knight at e2 is loose, so black either has to move it, defend it, or just sacrifice it, but it has no ability to defend itself. So white is actually quite happy. But another thing is the way that the queen and the rook are combining, they're not focused on g7, and also white has, it takes 3. It takes 3 pieces, 1 piece to sack, 2 pieces to mate. So that's the rule of 3. Now, so this is a beautiful example of acceleration. Okay, so the rook can't checkmate the king. The king can't move anywhere. So if the king can't move, check is mate. So, but the rook isn't able to cover, isn't able to coordinate with the knight. What coordinates well with the knight? The queen. So this actually is a situation where you want to use type 1. You want to, it's a perfect example of it. And also type 5 is an easy way to think about type 5. I like to call it precipitation. It's the rash, explosive force. So I can actually sort of, just to think about it, it's the art of the sacrifice, positional sacrifice, sacrificing the exchange. Say a rook for a minor piece and a pawn. It's breaking open the position, a knight for some pawns, counterplay. It's the rash force, the precipitation. It's the lightning before the thunder. Okay, and so I can also suggest to you that there's a certain sacrificing that you have to do here. So let's have a look at all the checks, and it's very good to just think about, like right here we've got queen to d6. That doesn't really work, the knight just lops her off. And we've also got rook to h1 check. Now the beautiful thing about rook to h1 check is it sort of paralyzes white's pieces. It doesn't matter that the queen's attacking the knight on e2, because you must deal with the check, and the king can't move anywhere, so it has to recapture the rook at h1. So you've attacked directly the king, and you've moved the king down to h1. It's a forced move. The king has to take h1. You've got complete control of the game now. So now, because your momentum has that furtherance, has that forwardness, your queen and your coordination with that rook, your queen can obviously come to d1 check, and now once again there's no way for the king to block this piece. There's no recourse. All of the pieces are so far forward, the king's back rank is way too weak, and so the king has to go to h2, has to advance to h2, and now the situation is different. The king is back at h2, the knight is at e2, but it's the queen that's at d1. And what can the queen do when the king can't move? Check his mate. Obviously, check the checks. They could be made. Doesn't matter how ridiculous. The queen can go move to g1, and that's checkmate, because the knight is controlling the dark squares at G1 and G3, and the pawn is at G2. So you can actually see here, you know, a bit of that explosive energy as well, that willing to sacrifice to get your way. Remember the rule of three: one piece to sack, two pieces to mate. And obviously, the knight's torque on the position is far more, and the fact it's in the end zone is it's far more powerful than the queen. It's far more powerful than the rook. It's far more powerful than that other knight that's in sort of, it's at C4, but what's it doing? You know, I mean, okay, so it can go to E5, but what's happened is it's about speed. A change of velocity is speed plus tempo. Why wasn't able to deal with the velocity of the pieces here? The velocity was just way too overwhelming. So now in this open center, both center pawns have gone for either side. It's about pointing the pieces at the king, and it's about coordinating your pieces together, centralizing your pieces, and it's about, yeah, like I said, pointing at the king. Now, the fact that white has allowed the black to control that center file control, and to get the knight at E2 it's critical. Now, just that king safety, that is the difference. Now, if white actually could have you know, freed up his position more, if the king could have had escape squares, that would have been much better. And and I've made this mistake myself in games where I don't actually, like, I just get, my aggression gets a little bit ahead of me and my king safety is a bit weak. And the thing is, the fact that knight is at E2, and it is the slowest piece, it's the slowest piece in the dance that we have here. The knight, and the fact that it's more forward than its opposing knight, the fact it's in the end zone, and controlling where the king is very, very significant. And and that coordination between the queen and rook, that momentum to the end zone is obviously better. And you know, and the person with the tempo has the power. And you know, that rash, explosive energy, you know, it's using the car analogy, type 5 acceleration is that 18-year-old energy, you know, it's like, I'm going to break the speed limit energy. And that's the fact that it's all forcing, you know, check, mate. And the fact it's all forcing is allowed because the king has nowhere to move. All right, when the king can't move, you can actually do that. You can actually force it. And it turns out the queen at D7 is better than the queen at E4. Often it's not the case. So and it's just, I think white's played hasn't really understood what's happening, hasn't really understood the threat against the king, and so misplaced pieces, that's what happens. You know, and having control over that center file, having that advanced knight is just, you can see how significant it is. And because at the end of the day, checkmating the king is the name of the game. So thank you very much for listening and for going through it. And you know, we can see that the king is just such a major center of gravity. It actually helps. Gravity is always present, and it's pulling those pieces towards it. The fact the king can't move is a huge red flag to the ball. It should be just like, okay, I'm like an 18-year-old behind the wheel, you know. That's it. You know, I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to bust through, I'm going to play as dynamically as possible. All right, take care. Bye.